What about time perception, right? How does that get affected? In other words, does a minute last the same amount for them as a minute that lasts for us on Earth?
Analog astronauts, for example, a lunar standard clock. This is completely different measuring of the time. In microgravity, what they observed on the International Space Station is that the cell proliferation is increased, the whole process, but cells are much smaller in microgravity. How big impact it will bring to us, to the Earth? Colonization of our other planet or on the Moon.
What about time perception, right? How does that get affected? Do they feel like time slows down, time speeds up? Obviously, without their sleeping and circadian rhythms disturbed, they're definitely not seeing time the same way. But from a psychological point of view, what does that? I mean, is there an effect on their actual perception of time besides just because their day and night cycles are thrown off? In other words, does a minute last the same amount for them as a minute that lasts for us on Earth?
Very good question. Well, I think that many people who fallen in love, this is a good idea, especially in this springtime, where everyone is falling in love. Well, when you are in a special state that you cannot sleep, that you are all the time jet lagged, then I think that time, you are losing the time perception. It means that you cannot feel seconds, not at all, forget about it. You cannot feel even hours. It is everything completely like destroyed, all the composition what you have. So this is one thing. Again, when you see the sunlight, you can estimate, okay, now it's afternoon because sun is just, after the zenith, beyond the zenith, it's going down, so it must be afternoon. So this, of course, gives you some signs, external signs, but inside you are completely dysregulated when you are not sleeping well or when you are under serotonin, dopamine cocktail in your brain. So many things can change your time perception, also being in space. Many astronauts, they even say about it that they completely lose the time perception. The only timekeeper that they have is the schedule. So they have electronic clocks, of course, they have numbers and they follow the schedule, so they know where they are in the schedule, but they completely don't know if this is night or day. They can only say that
so
they
can't
are here.
Feel it. They can't feel the day like we do on Earth.
Yes,
they just know
absolutely.
This is what I'm supposed to be doing at this point in time.
Yes, and in our analog simulations with isolation from light and from time, normal time, we give our analog astronauts, for example, a lunar standard clock. This is completely different measuring of the time. That is simulation of the time on the Moon, where second is no longer a second. It is much shorter, like 0.84, something like this. So analog astronauts, they cannot really feel this. And after 3 days in the isolation, they cannot say at all if there is day outside or a night. This, they completely lose the ability to say.
So I have a question that's related to this because from a medical point of view, we see there are patients that suffer from dementia, such as Alzheimer's, or patients that we have that sometimes when night settles in, they start having like sort of like panic attacks. They become more angry. We call it dawning because their perception of time is altered. Now I'm wondering if the mechanisms that is being altered in these patients is similar to what the astronauts are going through in essence, and whether these same circuits, by studying the astronauts, we could actually help some of the patients here on Earth.
I think that definitely yes, and I'm not saying that yes because I'm a space lover. I want to do space biology and space medicine, but we still don't understand a lot of things that occur inside the head, inside such patients. Yes, so this still is not clear, and once we see it on healthy person, this kind of effect, I think we can say much more about it. Second thing is that astronauts are much better monitored. So we know all their health state on the Earth when they are here, and we can observe changes based on sort of like defined factors which can cause this kind of symptoms. For example, osteoporosis. We know that osteoporosis is caused by different conditions of gravity. But these all mechanisms, when we analyze them in space, we can help also people on the Earth with osteoporosis.
Amazing, yeah.
Because we understand much more how cells can proliferate, what kind of factors can stimulate the growth of bones or can inhibit, the dementia, the all processes that are destroying this tissue. So this is very good, and absolutely I agree that this kind of psychological problems that occur on Earth more and more, unfortunately, especially depression, this also causes sort of disturbances in time perception. People with depression have also these kind of things, and we believe that soon we will show very nice results showing correlation between biological clock, which can be stimulated by proper light. So it will be like a light therapy on this kind of people with symptoms like a depression. But we will see. We will see.
That would be exciting.
This is a hypothesis. We see that there is a correlation between time perception, like a subjective time perception, and we see correlation with circadian rhythms. If they are regular, there is very nice time perception in this kind of subjects. And how we measure the subjective time perception, we wrote an application that is available. I can later on give you an address, the link to the app. You can make it on the laptop and simply clicking every 5 seconds. First, there is a test, so you know how to do this, and then there is a real experiment. And after this experiment, you click, the computer gives you numbers, how you perceive the second, which is kind of interesting, if you can perceive this regularly or not. But these are seconds, they're not hours.
Right. I mean, this is amazing because people always, I'm a big fan of space, and you saw my telescope, and I love space explorations, but people say, we got all these sick people here on Earth. Why are we spending all these billions of dollars on trying to see what's out there in space and doing these experiments? Well, here's the great answer, right? By studying what happens to astronauts and these amazing experiments, we could actually come up with cures and interventions for people here. And it's even better experiments because we're isolating specific parts in a healthy body and studying specific variables in a controlled fashion, so we know exactly what is going on. So this is amazing.
I fully agree. And this $1 billion, this is still not a lot of money comparing to all other expenses here on the earth. So
No
if people
questions.
could know
Yeah.
how many billions of dollars are spent for roads, for example,
Right.
or for some buildings, this is very small amount of money,
I
which
mean,
really is a game changer.
right. And to think like maybe you can reverse some of the symptoms of depression by changing the light exposure as opposed to, loading up millions and millions of different kinds of drugs that cost so much money into these people. I mean, that's
Yes.
revolutionary, right? And how much money do we spend trying to develop these drugs that we don't even know how they work, or even if they work for depression or all of these things? So it's remarkable, and there's no arguing about the utilities of space exploration, and only people that are kind of narrow-minded would argue against that, to be honest with you. Besides the fact that it's space is the most coolest thing to be. So transitioning from circadian rhythms to, I know that circadian rhythms can also control the aging process, right? That's the other thing. So can we talk about what happens with aging in space? And I know, putting aside biology from Einstein's theory of relativity, if you're traveling at the speed of, light, time slows down, and so your aging could slow down. And I believe there were some studies looking at the twin astronauts where one was in space, that his aging was different than his brother on Earth. So can we talk about this? Because people still have a hard time understanding aging and how it could be altered and slowed down or sped up. So can we go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think aging is the oldest topic in the world. How to be, eternal, infinite. Well, so I will start from one thing, that when people discovered trains, and when first men wanted to use this new traveling, device, which developed very high speeds, not like a horse speed or a car speed, but trains. They started to develop very fast speeds comparing to other moving vehicles, transporting vehicles. Medical doctors were very much afraid what happens to human body when this body will exceed 100 kilometers per second, kilometers per meter. So this was very interesting thing, because no one knew what will happen when people will start travel with trains. It appeared that nothing. We can even move faster, like 400. Wait, it is very hard to me now to say kilometers per hour. Kilometers per hour. Sorry, I wanted to say about velocity. So in China, there are these trains, magnetic trains, that they can develop 400 kilometers per hour, which is enormous velocity. And we could think of, wow, what will happen with human body if it will move so fast? Nothing. Nothing. We can do this without any problems. So what will happen if we are in space, moving very, very fast, because it's like 7.6 kilometers per second, not per hour? Yes. Yeah. This is how ISS is moving beneath our heads. So this is very fast speed.
Right.
So again, this speed, of course, it is causing weightlessness, and weightlessness is not very good for our bodies, but the speed is okay. What Scott Kelly, his body, showed us, it is
sorry, can you tell the audience, just in case they don't know who Scott Kelly is?
It's an astronaut who was very long in space. He was like 1 year in space. I don't remember exactly what time now, but he was very long time in space. After he came back from space, medical doctors observed that there are changes in his genome. I mean, in his cells, the telomeres, which are, parts of chromosomes, the end parts of chromosomes, they were elongated. And the aging process is also about shortening these telomeres every time the cell is dividing in our body, because our body is, all the time some cells are dividing, and every time the cell is dividing, this telomere is shortened. In this astronaut's body, these telomeres were elongated after stay in space, comparing to his twin brother on the Earth. So we don't know what it means. Absolutely, we don't know what it means, but it may mean very important thing, that we can stop aging in space. What is amazing thing. You know how many billions of dollars
Okay,
it
I
can
think
use.
you may have to say that again for the audience, just because it sounds such a profound statement that aging, slowing down time in space just by traveling in a weightlessness, gravity, lack of gravity, and just the speed that you're traveling, you could literally slow down a process that gets us old. I mean, just think
It
about that
can
for a
be.
second, people. Like, that's just so amazing.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, we have only one case of study. What is nothing for statistics and for science.
But it's so
Unfortunately,
profound, though. I mean, it's not like we're looking at small changes. We're looking at telomeres, which are
yes,
pretty,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And these genetical methods to measure this, they are really precise. So
yeah.
there is no doubt that there is some mistake with Scott Kelly's cells and telomeres. And what is very interesting, when Scott Kelly came back to the Earth, these telomeres shortened again,
Oh
back
my God.
to the normal state. So it is not like a permanent, change. What is again amazing fact,
Right.
that our chromosomes can adjust to the environment.
Oh my.
This is amazing.
Yeah. So okay. Why? Right? Like, why would this happen? And how why would biology care about where it is in space?
Well, one big question is about what really does space radiation. We have plenty of very nice scientific articles revealing that long-term exposition to cosmic radiation will only devastate biological organisms. But in nature, we know organisms like a fungi that they can grow faster, better after exposition to ionizing radiation. We know that nature has a machinery that can protect DNA, because this is the most important, from the damage. So we know this, but of course, humans, we don't have proteins that are, radiation resistant. As far for now, we don't know if we have, yes,
Right.
because
I
this we
mean,
don't know. But probably, putting an organism in a very harsh environment can cause very huge stress response, multiple repairing mechanisms, multiple enzymes can be activated. It is so huge family of these molecules that it is impossible to test on, now are like 560 astronauts that flown to space. So still the number of people that were there is very small. All methods that we have, the technologies, they are now developing to really get into this molecular level, what happens at
science.
this level. So I must say that we are just in the beginning of asking this question and getting answers.
So just to be clear, this isn't some kind of a selection, right, process where the ionizing radiation kills off the cells that have shorter telomeres and leaves the ones that are longer. And then when you come back here, there's no competition, so the telomeres shorten, right? I mean, this is actually telomeres not getting shorter.
Yeah, this I don't know, but I know that also there is a project developed in the European Space Agency that can freeze, the whole cells. The team working on hibernation and torpor. Hibernation is just, it's just lowering the metabolism. Many animals, they are sleeping in winter, and this is called hibernation. And torpor is something slighter, so the metabolism is lowered down, but not completely shut off. And this occurs in, for example, squirrels, hamsters, so they have torpor. And recent studies of this hibernation team in ESA, European Space Agency, they showed that they may induce artificial torpor simply by using GABA blockers to the stem here.
The brainstem, yeah.
Inject brainstem, they inject the GABA. So then they induce a synthetic torpor, which means that the metabolism slows down. And when the metabolism is slowed down, the organism is much more resistant to radiation. So they have proved on rats, which are not hibernating animals, that when they induce this synthetic torpor, that all processes are shut down and the ionizing radiation is not devastating this organism.
And
So
if I understand correctly, I think they did some kind of RNA-seq or deep sequencing on Scott Kelly's genome, and they did find quite a profound genes in metabolism that were altered, if I remember that correctly, right?
Yes, and maybe this is also related with circulatory system, that heartbeat is completely different in space because heart doesn't need to pump so much blood. The heartbeat is much more slower down. Of course, it depends on the astronaut, but it is like really slow heartbeat. It means that the whole metabolism probably is slower down.
So theoretically speaking, if you were a kid born in space, it would take you much longer time to get your driver's license, right? Because you would not be 18 for another maybe 25, 30 years, right? Before you actually turn 18.
But I don't know if I will be able to, to move my hands in this way. Because in microgravity, what they observed on the International Space Station is that the cell proliferation is increased, the whole process, but cells are much smaller in microgravity. So they grow faster, but they are much smaller. And the second thing is that several enzymes are not functioning properly. So it is not easy, that the human body would develop properly in space. Probably it would be completely different development.
Have there been any studies done in other animals where, like in rats or mice, to see what is the developmental process in utero or after they're born, to see if their limbs are not properly developed or their skeletal system is off or any of those features?
This I don't know, but I know that there is experiment with rats, with rodents, in opposite conditions to microgravity, in hypergravity. It was like a 2G centrifuge, so they observed that animals in these hypergravity conditions, they grow bigger, they are very strong, very healthy, and they develop much better. So these studies I know, and this was also incredible result that I found. In microgravity, I don't get this data, honestly, about development, but of course they were made many studies on chickens, for example, so hatching from eggs, and they were floating, because it was not flying, they were floating in microgravity. But I observed the movie and I saw that they developed properly.
And the reason I'm asking you these questions from a medical perspective, you know, for example, one of the diseases that's very devastating, and being a neuroscientist, I'm sure you've heard of Lou Gehrig's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which there's big theories that it's a sort of a hypermetabolic state. So I was wondering some of the things that we're learning about these astronauts and metabolism and all those changes, whether we could recapitulate those somehow on Earth and kind of slow down the disease processes in something like Lou Gehrig's disease. Because you were talking about injecting GABA into, I mean, I'm not saying let's inject GABA into humans,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the theory behind it to slow down the metabolism and hopefully slow down the disease.
I think yes, especially this hibernation team in European Space Agency. I know that NASA is also working on hibernation. This is hot topic now because of Journey to Mars. How to make it, how to make it possible. So one idea is hibernation of astronauts. And I think that these studies will bring many answers with these metabolic diseases on Earth.
And of course, it's a big issue in cancer, right? Metabolomics in cancer and diseases. So it's another great example of how space medicine could teach us about medicine. So it's exciting stuff. And, you know, for the viewers, you know, if you're a kid, it's a great time to be getting into science and into these kinds of topics. It's amazing, you know. Okay, so one last quick question. When do you think humans will be able to colonize another planet? I left the easy question towards the end.
This is easy question. Well, you know, if I could decide or you could decide, it will be faster. It will be very fast.
Right.
But
we would have been there already because the money would have been there. But
yes, but unfortunately, it's a mostly political issue, and this is the largest problem, I would say, largest barrier, because I think that scientists and people who understand maybe more about it, how big impact it will bring to us, to the Earth, colonization of our other planet or on the moon. So if these people could understand how many positive things can it bring back to the Earth, then I think it would be very fast, in 5 years even. Like this time on the moon. On Mars, I would give like 20 years from now.
And putting politics and money aside, if we had unlimited money and resources, what are the medical challenges, like the top 3 that you think need to be solved? And if you were a graduate student, or if you were a young kid with aspirations to solve these problems, can you tell them what they are so they could help you solve them?
The largest problem is the cosmic radiation. This is one problem. Second problem is that in our gravity conditions, our body is not working same as on Earth. So then we need to train or to do other things like pharmacological, you know, pharmacological
interventions
thank you, interventions. I'm very sorry. Yes, so definitely cosmic radiation, then these microgravity and other gravities environments, harsh environments, coping with stress and with isolation from our planet Earth, because we are humans developed on this planet on Earth, and how to survive on completely different lands. This could be a problem.
And social isolation, we know, especially now, people know really well how difficult it could be, and imagine that you can't get out of that social isolation for a long time. So dealing with all
you reminded me, sorry that I'm disturbing you, you reminded me about our microbiomes and viruses,
right,
which can develop in various unknown directions. This will be also a challenge for medicine.
So definitely there's some exciting solutions to be made, and exciting time to be a scientist. And no matter, in the beginning you were talking about how there's different specialties involved, whether you're an engineer, a biologist, a physician, a mathematician, or whatever, you could get into space medicine and contribute your smarts and help us solve these problems. So I encourage everybody listening, to be excited about this and push the kids towards these kinds of directions rather than, some of the other fields they're going into.
Yes, and what I can say, the last words, is that now rocket science is no more a rocket science. You know what I mean. Now the real rocket science is space medicine and space biology. This is the real challenge now that is blocking us to colonize other planets.
We'll find a way to get there, but the problems of while you're getting there on a human is the problem that we need to solve, right?
Yeah.
This is amazing. I can't thank you enough for doing this, and hopefully we could have a couple of more episodes in the future to talk about some of the other exciting experiments and stuff that you're doing. But can you briefly tell the viewers about how they could get involved in some of these things and the analog simulation that you're doing? And if somebody's interested and watches this and says, cool, but what do I do? Could I get involved? How would they go about doing it?
I had the same question when I was younger, much younger.
If I had an answer to that, I would have been. You're right.
I was just a biologist, and I really wanted to work in European Space Agency. And I said, oh my God, what I can do? I'm only a stupid biologist and not a rocket scientist.
I'm not.
But then I worked there, and I was so happy. And now I want to share this knowledge and this experience that I got, that medical doctors, biologists can and should work in space agencies. They are absolutely necessary, and especially now there are huge money given to space biology, space medicine. Actually, I know what is for a European Space Agency contracts and funds. So this is a big money for space biology, space medicine.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that? All of you that needs
yes,
their loans
so
paid
this is one thing you can get, a very cool job.
Besides being the most awesome job in the world.
Yeah. And our company, Analogue Astronaut Training Center, is facilitating this road. So we are trying to, first of all, bring you into space medicine, space biology research. And you can collaborate with us either remotely from your university, research institute, your company, as a principal investigator. We call this kind of scientists, or somebody who is leading the project, scientific project. So you can just fill in our application form, and then we organize analog simulation. We recruit the analog astronauts, and they are performing your experiment in the station, and then we give you back your data. So this is one opportunity to collaborate remotely from anywhere in the world, or from another planet even. And the second possibility is just to come physically to Poland, to us, and to be either an analog astronaut to participate in this simulation. So, of course, to be from one side experimental rabbit, because we usually experiment on these people isolated inside the habitat. But you also will learn a lot of things what astronauts should have. You will perform the training, you will get certificates, and all people, they really like it, because these are, of course, enthusiasts, space enthusiasts. So you have different possibilities how you can collaborate with us. Oh, there were also companies who just gave us, for example, a rover, and we were testing this rover. Or there was one case of space medicine, that there was a mission control center. There were medical doctors outside, and they were measuring their parameters on our analog astronauts during the mission. So there are many possibilities. Awesome. Welcome.
I will definitely put your website on here later on, and also on the link.
Thank
I
you.
will share that with everybody. For space astronaut, for analog astronauts, are there age limits, or are there qualifications? Just really briefly, in terms of if there are people looking for summer camps, not camps, but summer research, or like if you're a high school college level, and if you want to spend the summer doing some of these things, can they get involved in projects and helping out, or in any way like that?
Generally, we are organizing this mission for students after the high school, before the studies,
Mhm.
because these people are just they are starting their careers and they really want to get something in their CVs. So
Mhm.
we have a large group of these kind of people, and we group them in teams, because we want to have like age same teams. Then we have students and we have postdocs.
Okay.
So we have like 3 groups of people who are involved in such analog missions.
So
We
everybody
are
can get
mostly
involved.
afraid of
They just all they need to do is want to get involved. You got the opportunities, right?
but yeah, you need to have money first of all to come to
Right.
Poland, because this is a huge cost. Yes, so this is one limit. Second limit is, of course, that sometimes we also ask to pay for food during the mission. So we cover the rest, but the food you need to cover for these 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and training, because 3 days before the mission we have pre-training. So yeah, this is quite
And and,
expensive when it
and
comes to
what kind of food is it? Is it regular food, or are they still being treated like astronauts and given, just out of
they are
curiosity?
they are treated like astronauts. So we have medical doctor who is making checkup before they go to the habitat,
Mhm.
because we want to have 100% of certainty that these people are healthy.
Mhm.
Usually we ask, especially older people, to show us medical examination tests
Mhm.
from several diseases, same as astronauts.
I see.
So you can already see if you can be the astronaut. After
Oh,
you pass our test, you know that you will pass tests for
for
real
an
astronaut training.
that is
But
awesome.
it is for older people, not for young.
I see. Well, I can't thank you enough again for doing this, and hopefully we could have more conversations like this down the line. For me, it's like I got a million more questions to ask, because it's like me being a kid again, and just space exploration. So I I want to thank you again for doing this show, and I'm sure the audience loved having you. So I truly appreciate all the great work you're doing, the inspiration also, and the results from your studies are gonna have profound effects. So want to thank you again for all of that.
Thank you very much, Jack, one more time for invitation, and thank you all for listening us.
Oh, thank you so much, and I want to wish you a wonderful night. I'm assuming it's night back in Poland, right? And
Yeah.
hopefully we can have more discussions like this down the line. And good luck with everything. And hopefully we've inspired a few people to join and learn and go into the space medicine and space science.